creativities.
You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. Maya Angelou once said that, and it brings us nicely onto the topic of today's show. Welcome everyone to the Connect Forth Art Show, where we're going to be talking about the creative process. I'm your host, Elijah Olson, and I want to thank you for joining us. We'll be following around our on-the-scene reporter Billy Brown as he takes a look around Stirling's art galleries. Hilditch will be taking us on a trip to Europa Music, the biggest browsable record store in Scotland, and we'll also be showing you how this episode came to be, a sort of behind-the-scenes look at a very own creative process here in the studio. But before all that, let's jump into the first segment. Reporter James Smith has sat down with 3 local artists to discuss their creative process.
It's a miserable, rainy day at the start of December, so I've decided to sit down with a few artists and get their viewpoints on the art that they create and the world that they create art in.
Hello, I'm Leo. I study illustration in Glasgow.
I'm Heather and I do art and design at Freefield College.
I'm Kirsty. I don't actually study art. I do sports science at Stirling.
When it comes to ideas, how do you sort between ones that are worth pursuing and ones that should be abandoned?
I show my lecturer and she tells me if it's bad or not.
Yeah, for me it's like, sort of like I've written stuff and I've gotten like halfway through and just been like, no, this is not worth it.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I work. I find that the worst ones are actually when I work methodically, and the best ones are usually very spontaneous. They're just like kind of when I'm out for a walk or something, I'm not really thinking too much about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've felt similar things. What about you, Kirsty?
I'll always like try and see a project through to the end and just wait to see if it's good or bad. And then if it's bad, I won't look at it again.
Because you do quite a few commissions, don't you? So with a commission, it's
not
not necessarily
happy.
about how you're happy with it, like how happy you are, but how happy the person who's paying you is.
Yeah, like I've done commissions before and I've not been happy with the end result, but it's fine. If they like it, it's fine. That's all that matters.
What's your proudest art achievement?
I'm proud of all of it. I think each one means a different thing to me because, well, it all means something to me. I'm proud of it as a whole. Each thing separately, it's inspired by like a strong thought or emotion I have at the time. So, and because it's all from inside my head, I relate to all of it and I find comfort in all of it. So, yeah, I don't have a favourite. It's like choosing between like your pets. Like, what one's your favourite? You can't really do it.
I've got a favourite achievement from a while back. That was from sixth year of high school actually, and we were working on like our advanced high art folios, and mine got chosen to like be in like the gallery for like the best folios in Scotland for like that year. I was pretty proud of that.
We did my class did a calligraphy project recently, and so we had to make entire alphabets out of some sort of idea, and mine was me and my cat, so all the letters are myself and my cat doing funny poses, and people liked it.
That's cool.
How do you feel social media has helped or hindered getting your art out there?
Well, that would actually help if I was good at using it. I think it can only be like advantages if you're good at using it, which I'm not, because I'm just really bad at putting myself out there, and I don't know, I can't stick to like a schedule. Like, I would find it a chore having to check in with it regularly, you know.
Yeah, you've got to like be on the algorithm. You've got to be posting
I'm not good at that.
every week now.
No.
That's like basically where I exist for my art. I do not have a schedule. Like, I'm like so behind like putting stuff up on like Instagram. That's pretty much where I'm based. But just like coursework for like my uni stuff just kind of backtracks on putting art out there by trying to do as much as I can. But it's fun. It's definitely fun. Definitely a way to go.
I still post stuff even though I don't really like a lot of it, and especially on Instagram because art's really popular there and you're just constantly comparing yourself to other people, but I just do it anyway because there's no point in just not putting it out there.
That's true, yeah. It can only be a good thing, really.
You gotta get your name out there. It's a stepping stone.
James Smith,
Yeah,
how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Ross.
That's a damn good segment you just produced for us there.
Yeah, it was interesting to work on. It was like it's good to like talk to people like in they have disciplines different than your own, you know?
The creative minds.
The creative minds, we're all over the world.
Oh yeah, definitely. So it was 3 artists you sat down with.
Yes.
How'd you find them?
Well, Leo I know personally, like we've talked to each
That was
other
one
on
of
the
the
internet.
voices we heard, Leo.
Yeah, Leo. Kirsty, she's a friend of a friend, and Heather I discovered because of her artwork is being displayed around Forth Valley Sterling campus.
I have seen that around. Yeah, it's some very very nice sculptures and statues she's made.
She's done like if you're familiar with the Sterling campus, there's been like 2 wolves on display at the entrance to the building, and they're constantly there.
When I found out that was her and that was a student at Forth Valley campus, I was very impressed because that's some very nice artwork.
Yeah, they're very big as well.
Exactly, they must have taken ages to make.
Yeah,
but it wasn't about how long they took. It was about the creative process. So do you think you found out some new things?
Yeah, it was like sort of. It's interesting because like I'm a writer, so like I sort of look at things through that sort of lens, and then like talking to artists, like they're talking about like how they just sort of go with things sometimes. Like with being a writer, you've got to like have a lot of planning before you even start writing a story. But they're just like, they can just bang out a sketch and do like a little bit.
Yeah, see where their imagination takes them.
Yeah, I've got a plan, which is boring. I don't like planning.
Do you think maybe after speaking to these guys, you might change your approach at all, or try something new?
I've been a lot looser with writing after that. Yeah, I started writing some scripts without any planning, just like sit down, and
seeing where they take you.
Yeah, seeing where they take you. One sentence, and then the next sentence has just got a link to the last sentence, and just keep doing that until you get to the end.
Definitely a different way of doing things, and I think that's quite healthy. Trying new things.
Yeah,
and it might, you never know where you might end up.
Definitely, I think it's like if you're a creative person and you just stick to the same old way you do things, you will stagnate eventually. You've got to change things up. You've got to see like where the depths of your creativity can be found. Really.
So you don't want to bore yourself.
No,
you wanna keep it interesting.
Don't be like, I'm just gonna create this character that I've created 100 times before, and then make them do this thing which I'm very familiar with. You want to see just where your mind can take you. You'll be surprised sometimes.
Well, can you tell us a bit more about? You said you knew Leo personally. You know more about his artwork?
Yeah, he studies illustration at Glasgow, City of Glasgow College.
Very creative city.
Yeah. So he's been doing a lot of things. It's illustration, so it's like more sort of ink based, and I know him quite well, and his the work he's shown me is like very cool. It's like he's got a very unique style. It's very like cartoony, but like slightly edgy. So
that's cool. Well, it's interesting, and it's quite good in your segment that you got artists that were different styles of artists, because obviously Leo was like sketches and illustrations, and Heather was more sculptures and stuff like that. So I thought that was good.
It was definitely like also like varying degrees of experience. So I had 2 people who were studying art formally, and then one person who was studying PE and then doing art on the side. So I thought that was quite interesting because like not all artists actually go into education for art. It's their passion, so they just do it on the side.
Well, thank you very much for that segment, and thanks for coming into the studio after to talk about it too, James.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's a pleasure. If you want to see the work from these artists, you can find Leo's work at bedhead.ren on Instagram, Kirsty's work at Kirsty with a Q on Instagram, and Heather's work you can find displayed all around Forth Valley College. Now let's move on to our next segment with legendary and fan favourite reporter Billy Brown. This week we can find him at Sterling Smith Gallery, where he spoke to art enthusiast and collection manager John McGuinness.
I am here with John McGuinness, the collections manager of Sterling Smith Gallery. How do you choose what you put on display in the museum?
It depends on whether it's part of our collection, whether it's a special exhibition, whether it's a travelling exhibition. Sometimes you've got no choice, you get an offer you can't refuse. So it's not a simple matter of there's a guide to it. There's no guide to it. That's why we're curators. We make the decisions on the spot, and we try and make it most interesting things we can. So we won't just put objects out simply because we have them. We try and make them fit to some story that makes it interesting for someone to look at.
Do you have like a specific target audience that you're kind of aiming at?
Not particularly, no. We are available to everybody and anybody, so we don't care who comes into the museum, quite honestly. It's very difficult in a kind of general museum to target a particular audience. All museums tend to have people who are over 40 coming in, general visitors, and also kids under 15 or 16 because they come with schools, and then they also come back with their families. In that middle bit, it's very difficult for museums to attract anybody other than some of the specialist museums who can attract teenagers and they can attract young people. But there's that thing about teenagers aren't interested particularly, and then everybody goes to works, so you end up working. But these people then appear back after they've been married and they've got children, then they bring the children in, and then the children bring them back. So you get that kind of pattern over all museums all over the world. It's the same, and it's very difficult to kind of change that set of visitors. But we still target people. If there's a particularly interesting exhibition, we will target a particular group through Facebook advertising and things like that. Whether that works is just completely, we don't know. It's a one-off. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
Where do you actually get the art pieces from?
Well, we have our own collection of about 3,000 pieces of art. So most of the stuff we do is with our own collection. The rest of it is, and this is up to this year, it's now changing, but up to this year, it would be local artists, it would be people would write in and say, I've got an idea for an exhibition, and we would look at that and decide, oh, that's okay, and people will like that. Occasionally I've gone out and found artists to work with and done exhibitions, and other ones are exhibitions that maybe have a national touring thing to them. So we were offered, the Queen offered us a Leonardo exhibition, which obviously that was one we couldn't turn down.
Yeah. Do you change what's on display regularly?
Normally we would have a change of exhibition every 6 to 8 weeks. There's been lots of staff changes in the last few months, so that has essentially stopped. We're also planning to redevelop the museum, so we have to do less so that we actually have time to do the work for the redevelopment. We can't do everything. Changing exhibitions every 6 to 8 weeks meant we were doing 16 to 20 exhibitions a year, which is an enormous amount of time, because it takes at least a week taking exhibitions up and putting them back down, at least a week. So essentially that's half my working year gone simply moving exhibitions about. So can't do that anymore. We'll still do some exhibitions this year. There'll be about 4 or 5 smaller ones in 2019. After that, it will be up to the director. There's a new director here, so after that will just depend, because I will be retiring at some point in the next year and a half, so it won't have anything to do with me. So the future just depends on the redevelopment and what happens with the redevelopment. There's plans for lots of exhibitions, there's plans for fixed exhibitions using our collections, there's plans for events and lectures and everything that goes with it. So it's very flexible. We have to be flexible, otherwise you'll be stuck with the same audience all the time.
What is your favourite thing about the museum?
I get to look after objects that no one else is allowed to touch. It's really the privilege of being able to see things that I, as a boy, read about in magazines and things, and then I came to the museum and I was able to open boxes and pull these objects out that I'd been reading about, and so I can handle everything that's from around the world. I've got samurai and pre-Columbian pottery, and I've got things from China and Africa, and of course I've got the world's oldest football that I look after, so that's been very good. So it's just a privilege to be able to handle all this and look after it for the public and then show the public the objects.
Okay, thanks for the interview.
So, I'm welcoming back William Brown, or Billy Brown, a local hero, really, a reporter for this show, the Connect Forth Art Show. Listeners love you, William. Welcome back into the studio. How was your trip to the art gallery?
Yeah, it was good. We showed up without having an interview scheduled, and went straight to the desk, and we got an interview straight away. It was they're very welcoming, very nice. That's
very, very casual.
Yeah, it was kind of stressful because we didn't have an interview planned, but they were very welcoming and carried out a good interview, or what I thought was a good interview.
Was it busy at all, the museum?
No, it was a good time to go. There was just a few people.
I suppose it is. What is it? It's December now. People aren't usually going to museums in December.
Who knows? They might change they said they changed what's on display 5 or 6 times a year. So go whatever time you want. Might be different.
So what type of things were on display?
Anything you can imagine, really. They've got some art pieces, stuff that's been donated from, like, even from the Queen. And,
Queen of England?
Yeah, the Queen of England.
Wow.
And a lot of other things, historic things, like they have the world's oldest football and the world's youngest football. And
what?
I don't understand how the youngest football works. But yeah, it was really interesting, actually. And it's free to walk about, so...
It's free?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It's pretty good. I thought you'd have to pay for it, but...
That's really good. And can you tell us more about John McGuinness, the guy who gave you the interview? He seemed like a passionate character.
Yeah, he is the collections manager, I think, if that's right.
Yeah.
And he was really good. He's really interested in what his job is. He's been doing it since he's a kid, or he's been interested in those sort of things since he was a kid. And he's retiring next year, I think.
Oh, well, we'll have to send him a present over from the show.
Yeah.
For such an accommodating guy. What was it like speaking to someone so knowledgeable about the art?
It was really clear that he was really enthusiastic about... He was really interested in what he was doing. And it was quite nice to see somebody that's just so passionate about their job. And he's said his favourite thing about it was that he's read about these pieces and artwork and stuff like that since he was a kid. And then now he gets to touch it and see it, and no one else would have done that in the past.
Well, that's really cool, to be honest. But what I really like when I go around an art gallery, I like the watercolor paintings. Did you see any at the?
Can't say I did. There might have been, but we were kind of short on time, so we only got to do a quick wee look about.
We jaunt around.
Yeah, we just saw the oldest football, couple historic things, and just headed off.
Did they let you play keepy-ups with it?
No, they did not, because it's securely in a position.
Well, that's a shame.
I guess. I don't really want to ruin the world's oldest football.
Yeah, no, exactly. Very respectful.
But no, yeah, it was really good. Didn't take too long either, and the guy was really easy to talk to, which made it a lot easier.
That's always nice for interviews, anyway.
Yeah.
And well, just since it is about the creative process, well, how did you think about going to this museum? Why this museum instead of other ones?
I think, well, the first thing, if you search Stirling Museum, that's going to be the first thing that comes up. It's one of the oldest ones, and it just seems like it's the most relevant in Stirling. There's the most stuff
Probably
going on.
The most popular, right?
Yeah, well, considering they're getting art pieces from the Queen,
yeah,
and things like that, then surely it's the most viable option.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Because it's located just under the castle, isn't it? You see the castle grounds and everything from...
Yeah, close enough, yeah. Pretty much.
Out near King's Park, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Well, if you do want to get yourself down to the Sterling Smith Gallery, well then, give it a Google. I hope you learned a lot from Mr. Billy Brown's segment. Thank you very much for doing it for us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
In our next segment, Lewis Hilditch has travelled to local record store Europa Music. He sat down with the owner to talk about the store, as well as what they're doing to sell artists' work.
I'm here at Europa Music, one of Stirling's biggest music shops, and I'm going to speak to you and Duncan to chat a little about what Europa Music does.
First of all, what is Europa Music? Can you describe it to us?
Europa Music is a record shop. It has been described as Scotland's largest vinyl record shop. I would say it's probably Scotland's largest browsable vinyl record shop, and it's become a bit of an institution over the years between Alloa and Stirling.
How long have you guys been open for?
I have been in ownership of Europa Music since 1982. It was previously owned by a chap who had opened it in 1976 in Alloa. And I took it over in 1982 and moved it to Stirling in 1992 and in its present format since 95.
What would your main demographic be for people who buy vinyls from this shop?
I would say there really isn't a demographic in that we try and supply, or we try and offer music that suits every taste. Hence the quantity. We have something for everybody, we hope.
Have you seen a rise in young people buying vinyl?
Yes, that's increasingly in the last 10 years. For maybe about 5 years before that, there had been a definite decrease on younger folk buying CDs, far less vinyl, because of the onset of streaming or Napster or YouTube, whatever else. But definitely in the last 10 years, and more so in the last 5 years, much more of the younger demographic going for vinyl. There is a certain amount of nostalgia for, pre-digital times when you're actually streaming items. You're not getting a physical product, and people, when they're buying something, really they feel better having a physical item in their hand. For instance, in 7-inch single here, you can see what the all the details of when it was released and what it is and who it is, and the whole thing about taking the single out and putting it onto something physical rather than just going click and just you hear it. It's very convenient doing that, but it's not the same. Every year we've got Record Store Day, and it seems to be getting bigger every year. This is a shop that never let go of vinyl, apart from one glitch 23 years ago when our back shop burnt down. But when that happened, I said we need to rebuild because we can't have a record shop without records. And for me, the demand was always there, still is. There will be, I hope, for many years to come.
So, Lewis, welcome back to the studio. What was your trip to Europa Music like then?
So I've been to Europa Music a few times. It's a really good shop, lots of good records, a really big collection in there. So when I found out that we were making this show, I thought that it would be a really good place to go and interview you and Duncan, the man who spoke during the segment. A really knowledgeable guy. So he's owned the store for ages, and it was just good to hear his opinion.
Yeah, well, it was very nice of him to give us an interview.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he was really cooperative.
Pretty accommodating guy.
Yeah, really nice guy. I mean, everybody in Europa Music is got a few dogs kicking about.
They got dogs?
They got some people, got some dogs. Just like people hang about there. You can tell there's regulars and everybody's really friendly.
Do the dogs help sell the records?
I would say not necessarily directly, but through positive influence of some sorts. Yes, yes, they do.
Okay, so Lewis, did you discover any cool albums while you were there? And see anything you liked?
So I must admit, I'm not a big fan of. Well, it's not that I'm a big fan. Not a big fan of vinyls, but I don't have a record player. I don't own any vinyls, and although I've been there, it's only just been to browse with friends. But that day that I recorded this was actually the first day that I picked up a vinyl and put it on and played it by myself.
What was the record?
I found, I can't quite remember the artist, but it was called Electric Boogaloo 2.
Really?
And, yeah, and you know what? It was actually kind of
sounds like it's
kind of
funky.
groovy. It was nice. I enjoyed it. So
what was the price on that bad boy?
I think it was £5 to £7, maybe. Which
sounds like an absolute bargain.
Seems decent. Yeah.
It's all right, that.
Yeah, it was good. It was good fun.
So, Lewis, any final words about your segment?
Just to reiterate that great shop, friendly people, loads of music. They're passionate about selling music. Just get on down to Europa Music in Stirling.
Well, thanks very much, Lewis. And finally, here's the segment you've all been waiting for. A behind-the-scenes look at how we created this podcast, showing you our own creative process. How is everything coming along with the podcast? What you're hearing is a few guys making a podcast. But how do you make a podcast? Well, we're here to tell you.
The place up at the toll booth? Yeah, I messaged Lucy last night and she said that she had...
First, we had to agree on the theme and content of this podcast. After a few hours of discussion, we arrived at having the creative process as our theme, and we collectively bounced ideas back and forth about what we should include in the show. Next, we needed to prepare for these segments. This involved organising interviews, writing interview questions, writing scripts, and getting equipment prepared for recording. Now here's the fun part. Getting out of the studio and talking to people.
So, the first question is, when it comes to ideas, how do you sort between ones...
Once we recorded the interviews, it's time to get back to the studio to start editing these interviews into packages for the podcast. Depending on the size of the interview, it can take a lot of time to edit them down for public consumption. Editing is where the podcast really starts to take shape. We add our voices to our packages, add background music and sounds to give the listener a better experience. Once this is done, we write a script for the anchor so they can link the segments together.
Maya Angelou once said that, and it brings us nicely onto the topic.
Once the script is done, we can record the presenters' links and put the whole podcast together. After we've done this, we all listen to it as a group, suggest changes if they're needed, then finalise the podcast. That's how we, as a team, create this show. Now back to the studio to wrap things up.
So that was our own creative process. What an interesting way to finish the show. And that's it. We'll see you all next time. Thanks very much for tuning in.
Connect Forward. Stay connected.